The Canon EOS R6 might actually be the best camera coming out in 2020 for a lot of people. Now, obviously you guys have heard a lot about the EOS R5, and rightfully so. A lot of those specs kind of sounded insane, and there's just a lot of hype around that camera, but I think it's actually gonna end up being a little bit more than what a lot of people actually need out of their camera. So now that some of these specs are coming out about the R6, this thing sounds really impressive, and I think it actually might be the better choice for a lot of people. So let's go ahead and talk about some of these specs on the EOS R6. Now, first and foremost, if you guys are new around here, my name is Johnny, and on this channel, I try to make content trying to help other creators create the best looking content that they possibly can. Now, this is not a camera rumor channel by any means, but I do own the EOS R, and I also own the EOS RP, and I'm a really big fan of the Canon mirrorless line so far, but I do think those two cameras are lacking a couple things, so I definitely am looking to upgrade to one of these higher end models when they do come out this year. So obviously, when the specs came out about the R5, I was really excited about it, and now that some of these specs coming out about the R6, this might actually be the better choice for not only me, but I think for a lot of other creators out there as well. So let's go ahead and talk about some of these specs that are going to be in the EOS R6. So first thing up here, it's going to have a 20 megapixel full frame sensor, which some people might think that sounds a little bit low, but as you guys will see here in a minute once I talk about the rumored price, I think 20 megapixels is going to be plenty. And also, if I were to pick up this camera, it's probably going to be video first for me, but even if I do want to take some photos with this, 20 megapixels is plenty for anything that I do, because most of my photos either go to web or over to Instagram, or even Instagram stories, which are going to get compressed anyways. So 20 megapixels is definitely still enough, I think. And as you guys will see here in just a minute when I kind of run through some of these specs, I think this camera is geared a lot more towards video than photo, but I do think 20 megapixels is still plenty. And also, I should note, I'm reading the specs off of my iPad here, so I make sure I get everything and all the numbers correct. I just wanted to say that real quick. The next spec here is this camera is going to have IBIS, which is an absolute huge win, and definitely one of my favorite things that's going to be on this camera. That's something that Canon cameras I think were lacking before, and I definitely missed it on the EOS R. I'm not going to dive too deep into what IBIS is, but basically it stands for in-body image stabilization, and what that means is it helps take out some of that natural motion and that handshake whenever you're hand holding your camera. If maybe you're trying to get that smooth shot or whatever, that's definitely a big feature, and I'm really excited about that. Now, these next few ones I'm really excited about. It's going to offer oversampled 5K video, which that's pretty awesome, but I'm actually a little bit more excited for the next thing. It's going to offer 4K video at 60 frames per second, and then if you know me, this next one, full HD at 120 frames per second. So 1080 at 120. Now, to be totally clear, I think 60 frames per second is plenty whenever you're shooting anything slow motion, whether you're just shooting B-roll or whatever. So being able to shoot 60 frames per second in 4K is a really big plus. But honestly, I think 1080p still holds up currently, which maybe it's kind of on its way out in a few years. But being able to shoot 120 frames per second sometimes, or at least being able to have the capability of it still in 1080, I mean, that's what made the 1DX Mark II so popular for video, is basically because it could shoot 1080 120. And honestly, if I didn't know that the EOS R5 was gonna have 4K at 120, be able to have the combinations that's gonna be in this R6, the 4K 60, the 1080 120, and even the oversampled 5K video, if you wanna try that out, I think that's kind of like the dream setup for an everyday YouTuber. Maybe not an everyday YouTuber, but kind of like a tech camera, I don't know, whatever category you wanna put me in. That's kind of like the dream setup for my situation. And then the EOS R5 is just kind of taking that to the next level. So yeah, very interesting, but those specs right there are really exciting to me. So it's gonna have Canon log or C-log, which you guys know if you guys are familiar with my channel. I'm a really big fan of coloring C-log. I've already made my own LUTs and presets, everything like that. So I'll be able to kind of just drop those in and it'll be good to go. It is gonna have 10-bit, which is a pretty big upgrade because the EOS R has, I think, 8-bit. So you're just gonna have some more information to play with, and you're gonna be able to get a little bit more detail out of your shadows and your highlights whenever it is time to color grade. So that's cool as well. The next thing, it says the autofocus is going to be identical to the EOS R5, which actually I have the EOS R5 specs pulled up here. And also, if you guys haven't checked out my video talking about the EOS R5, I will link it above. You guys can check that out. But basically it's just saying it's gonna have dual pixel autofocus in all 8K and 4K recording modes. So obviously the R6 isn't gonna have 8K, but that makes it sound like all the 4K is gonna have dual pixel autofocus, and I would think also the 1080p. So yeah, that's really cool. And dual pixel autofocus is super reliable, it's super quick. It's basically just really good. It's good and it's reliable. model. So that's pretty exciting. It's gonna have dual SD UHS 2 slots. That's a mouthful, but basically it's gonna have dual card slots, which is always nice. The next thing it says it's going to have head detection autofocus, which I don't know why it says head detection, not like eye detection. I would assume it still has eye detection, but I guess we'll kind of see. But head detection, whatever you want to call it, maybe like face detection, is usually really good. And it's been awesome on the EOS R and also the EOS RP, so I would have no doubt that it's going to be good on these higher end models as well. Also, it says it's going to have animal detection autofocus, which that's a huge win, okay? Whenever I'm trying to make videos with my pup, Mocha, that's gonna be good. That's such a random spec to have in here, but I guess if you wanna shoot stuff with your pets or you're like out doing stuff in nature and things like that, maybe that's a big plus for you, but that's kind of funny. Animal detection autofocus. The next thing up, it's saying that it's not gonna have that little digital screen on the top of the camera like the EOS R. I'll enter some footage or a photo so you guys can see what I'm talking about right there. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. That's gonna be higher priced than the EOS R, but it's not gonna have that screen, but I guess it's making up in other ways, so that's not something I would miss a lot, but that's kind of just an interesting choice. It says it's gonna have the same battery that is in the EOS R5, so I would expect it to be pretty good, but it is the LPE6NH battery, and honestly, I've never really had a battery issue with the EOS R, so I wouldn't expect to have one too much on these higher end models either. And then lastly, it's rumored to have the announcement on July 9th, and then also this camera is rumored to be priced under $2,500. So that's a really good price considering that the EOS R came out at, I think originally maybe it was $2,300, and then it was at $2,000 for a long time, and now I think you can pick one up for like $1,800 or something like that. I really am a big fan of the EOS R, and like I said, there's just a couple things I think it was lacking, but if you guys are interested to hear a little bit more about that specifically, I did a whole review on the EOS R and also the RP, so be sure to go back and check those videos out on my channel. But that's pretty much it as far as the specs go on this camera, guys. I think this one actually sounds really impressive. I think the EOS R5, I think everyone was just kind of taken back by all the crazy specs, and that's why that camera got so much of the hype. But not everyone needs to record in 8K or have like 4K 120 and all this kind of stuff. So we'll definitely see what the price point is of the R5 when that camera is like officially announced. So we'll see which one I actually end up going with for myself. Both of them sound pretty good for different reasons, but I think the R6 is starting to sound pretty tempting, and I think it might be the better choice for a lot of people as well. So we'll kind of see once official announcements are made with the shipping dates, the prices, and all that kind of stuff. But I'm stoked that Canon is kind of stepping up their game here. And honestly, having these camera companies kind of putting out better and better content and pushing each other only makes it better for us creators. It's gonna give us better stuff for better prices. So I am all for it. And one little disclaimer here that I do wanna say, because it's so easy to get caught up in all these specs and a new camera. Should you jump ship from Sony or Fuji to the new Canon line, everything like that. Most cameras these days from pretty much every manufacturer are going to be really, really good. If you can't make any good content with the camera that you already have, you probably need to work on your own skill and mastering the camera you already have. Picking up a new camera, picking up a camera with some crazy specs is not going to make your content magically better and magically good. A camera is just a tool, so whenever you kind of get to the higher end of things, definitely tools can help you make things not only better, but also make them easier. So I definitely would say just don't get too caught up in all the specs, although that is really fun, and I'm definitely guilty of it sometimes myself. Definitely master the camera you already have, make the best content you possibly can, and then whenever it's time to kind of financially invest into the next step, then you're kind of set up to do that. But I think I'm gonna end the video right here. If you guys enjoyed this video, drop it a thumbs up. That really helps the channel out. If you're new around here, consider hitting that sub button. I'd really appreciate it. And be sure to stick around if you guys are interested in seeing some more R6 and some R5 content down the road. And also be sure to check out that EOS R and EOS RP review if you guys are interested to learn a little bit more about the Canon mirrorless line. I just talked so much there. Hopefully that outro made sense. But yeah, I appreciate you guys watching. Be sure to follow me over on Instagram as well. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.